As all of you know, we are continuing with our BOA PG lecture series. And in this third season, in the basic lecture series, we have today the topic of gonioscopy techniques and interpretation. As you know, it is very important and very much information giving procedure that we can do in OPD, and it is very important to learn your basic skills in your residency itself. To teach that, we have today with us Dr. Priyanka Daitadak. Ma'am is assistant professor in the JJ Group of Hospitals. After finishing her MS, she has done a comprehensive fellowship from Ganpati Netralaya, and she will be talking about the gonioscopy techniques today. Over to you, ma'am. You can make it full screen and start your presentation.
Thank you, Sumit. I would like to thank BO team, Dr. Lanisa, Ragini Madam, Swapnesh sir, and Sumit for giving me this opportunity today. So today we are discussing about gonioscopy technique and interpretation. So first of all, what is gonioscopy? It refers to the technique used for viewing the antechamber angle of the eye with the help of gonio lenses or gonio prism. The purpose of gonioscopy is basically to see the angle structures, to view peripheral configuration of iris, and to differentiate between angle closure, occludable angle, or secondary glaucoma. A bit on the review of literature. So it was Trantas who first examined angle in the eyes with keratoglobus. Just by limbal indentation, he could see angle structures using a direct ophthalmoscope. And he only coined the term gonioscopy. Max Miller in 1914 was the first to perform direct gonioscopy and is known as father of gonioscopy. Goldman in 1938, a Swiss ophthalmologist who first introduced gonioprism. What are the indications for gonioscopy? There should not be any indication like, sir. It should be a part of your fundamental, it's like your comprehensive eye examination. All patients with glaucoma and suspect should undergo gonioscopy. If you find a positive Van Herrick test, the patient should undergo gonioscopy. Any sign of previous angle closure, like glaucoma flecken, iris atrophy, you should look for angle structures. As far as Indian scenario is concerned, early angle closure glaucoma is the most common entity found here. So early detection of angle closure with the help of gonioscopy is of paramount importance because a simple laser peripheral iridectomy can change the nature of the disease. So if you do gonioscopy in this diagnosis, it would be like a key in management of angle closure glaucoma. Other indications are like congenital glaucoma, pseudoexfoliation syndrome, pigment dispersion syndrome, IC syndrome, retinal vascular occlusion, where you can see new vessels in the angle. In case of active or past ocular inflammation, you can find peripheral anterior synechiae in the angle. In ocular blunt trauma, you may find a recession of the ciliary body or angle recession glaucoma. If there is history of foreign body, there may be a small foreign body lodged at the angle that also can be seen with gonioscope. In cases of ocular tumor and in cases of unexplained hypotony, where you should look for any eye cyclodialysis cleft. It is also done to detect an early diagnosis of Wilson's disease, as the copper deposition is seen in angle first, then cornea. Therapeutic uses of gonioscopy is used for argon laser trabeculoplasty, for selective laser trabeculoplasty. In pediatric or congenital glaucoma, goniotomy can be done with the help of this gonioscopy or gonio lenses. Contraindications, they are relative contraindications like any ocular infection in the form of conjunctivitis, ocular corneal abrasion or corneal epithelial defect, bullous keratopathy, any perforating eye injury. We should withhold the procedure of gonioscopy and you can perform it in a later visit. Why do you want to do gonioscopy? Because the normal angle of the antechamber is not visible. As the recess of the angle of antechamber is difficult to visualize, the area is covered by a projecting shelf of the sclera at the limbus. And that's why all the emergent light is subjected to total internal reflection, as shown in this diagram. I, that is the incident ray, is totally reflected back into the iris, that into the eye. So let's see what is the law of total internal reflection. So whenever the light passes from a denser medium to a rare medium, the angle of refraction is always greater than angle of incidence. When the angle of incidence reaches to the critical angle when the refraction is equal to 90 degree. And if the incidence angle is more than this critical angle, the light is reflected back into the denser medium, and that is called as total internal reflection. So in eye, the cornea air interface forms a critical angle of 40 degree. So with the help of these gonio lenses, you can overcome the problem of total internal reflection, because these gonio lenses actually changes the corneal cornea air interface to the contact lens air interface, and thus changing the critical angle, it allows us to view the angle structures. So to perform gonioscopy, we have two types of gonio lenses. Two types of techniques of gonioscopy. One is direct, where the gonio lenses are used, and other is indirect, where the gonio prisms are used. In direct gonioscopy, the instruments required are gonio lens, gonioscope, or a handheld biomicroscope, and a light source. In this process, a steep convex lens with a portable slit lamp or operating microscope is placed on the cornea. With the help of a balanced salt solution is put on the cornea. The patient is usually in the supine position, and the procedure is performed especially in general anesthesia and is particularly used in pediatric age group. The examiner holds gonio lens in one hand and light source in other hand to view the angle structures. There are different types of commercially available direct gonio lenses, which include Kopes lens. It is a prototype lens. It is available in different sizes, so it can be used in pediatric as well as adult age group. Other is Hoskins Barkan lens. It is a prototype surgical lens, and Swan Jacob is also a surgical gonio lens used to perform goniotomy in congenital cataracts. So advantages of direct gonioscopy are, as you are putting the lens on the cornea, and you are using a microscope or a handheld slit lamp, it gives a panoramic view of entire circumference of the angle. So it is best to compare the angle structure of both eyes, especially in cases of congenital glaucomas or any angle anomalies like Peter syndrome or Axenfeld-Rieger syndrome. And it is also used for the surgical procedures like goniotomy. Since the procedure is a bit inconvenient and special equipments are needed, it is not routinely done. So it is specially done for surgical procedures in pediatric age group. Next is indirect gonioscopy. The indirect gonioscopy is performed on the slit lamp. It uses mirrors or the prisms to overcome the difficulty of total internal reflection. Since we are using mirrors, it gives an image of opposite angle. The patient is asked to sit on the slit lamp, and the procedure is done under topical anesthesia. With the help of coupling agent, with or without, depending on which type of lens you are using, you are going to put the lens on the cornea, and you then rotate the lens to view the angle structures, and you can modify the slit lamp illumination and magnification. Various gonio lenses available for indirect gonioscopy. They are broadly classified as gonio lenses requiring coupling agent and gonio lenses which doesn't require coupling agent. So what is this coupling agent? So coupling agent could be a viscoelastic or methyl cellular substance or simple artificial tears, which are used to put the lens on the cornea. Since these lenses have a broad area of contact with the cornea, around 12 micromillimeters, so it requires a coupling agent to form a seal so that the lens can be stabilized on the cornea. Various types of lenses are there, like Goldman 3 mirror, Goldman 2 mirror, Singer mirror, and Allenthorpe gonio lens. So most commonly used is Goldman 3-mirror lens. It has a broad area of contact with the cornea. This 3-mirror lens has 3 mirrors inclining at a different angles. The mirror having inclination of 59 degree and this dome shape as shown in this clinical picture. The white arrow representing the dome shaped or D-shaped mirror which is used to see the angle. The other two mirrors which incline at a 67 degree and 73 degree are used to see pars plana and ora serrata respectively. So since the so how to view this angle or how to see the angle when you put the gonio lens, especially the Goldman 3 mirror, if you are putting the lens at, if you are seeing the D-shaped mirror at 12 o'clock position, it means you are actually viewing the angle of 6 o'clock. Since it provides a mirror image, you are seeing the angle of 6 o'clock, but it is not laterally inverted. So you are seeing 5 to 7 o'clock of angle at 12 o'clock position when you keep the lens at 12 o'clock position. Other lenses are single mirror gonio lens. It has only one mirror inclined at an angle of 62 degree. It is a prototype diagnostic gonio mirror. A third type is Goldman 2-mirror gonio lens. It has two mirrors inclined at 62 degrees. So we need to rotate this lens only once to examine the whole angle. And the fourth one is the Allenthorpe Golio lens. It has actually 4 prisms instead of mirrors. So it gives a whole, it gives the structural anatomy of whole angle without rotating the lens. So the advantage of Goldman gonio lens are they are easy to use. You can get an excellent view of angle structure since we are using a coupling agent which forms a seal with the corneal surface. It stabilizes the globe properly and can be used for laser trabeculoplasty procedures. The 3-mirror can be used to see a peripheral retina, and in case of Goldman 2-mirror, we don't need to rotate much when we use this lens, so it gives a best view, in situ view of the angle. However, it has some disadvantages, like we need to put a coupling agent. Since we are using a coupling agent, it blurs the vision and we cannot perform other tests like applanation tonometry, visual field testing after doing gonioscopy if we put a coupling agent. Since only one mirror is used, we need to rotate this lens 360 degree, which is a bit inconvenient. And since the area of contact is broad than the corneal curvature or the corneal surface, you cannot perform an indentation gonioscopy with the help of this Goldman lenses. So the next type is gonio lenses, which do not require coupling agent. So they are basically gonio prisms. So the prototype is Zeiss 4-mirror gonio lens. It has 4 identical mirrors placed at an angle of 64 degrees. Since we have 4 mirror here, we can see the angle simultaneously without rotating the lens. So all 4 quadrants are examined in one view. It has a small area of contact with cornea that is around 9 millimeters. So it can be used for indentation gonioscopy. You can see the picture of Zeiss 4-mirror gonio lens. Other types are Posner 4-mirror. It is same as Zeiss one, only the thing is it is made up of plastic and it has a fixed handle. Sussman 4-mirror gonio lens, it is a handheld Zeiss lens as shown in this picture. Since it doesn't have handle, you have to use with your fingers and you have to place it using your thumb, index and middle finger on the corneal surface. The Tokel gonio prism is a single mirror gonio prism and it gives a wider field of view. The advantages, like all 4 quadrants are seen at the same time. We don't need coupling agent for these 4-mirror gonio lenses. Indentation gonioscopy can be performed, and since we are not using the coupling agent, visualization of fundus or visual fields or applanation tonometry can be performed after gonioscopy. However, this has some disadvantages, like it is a difficult to master this technique, because since the area of contact is less, we are not using coupling agent, it doesn't stabilizes the globe. Or sometime with an undue pressure, you may open the angle falsely. And it doesn't give the actual image, it gives a mirror image of the angle. So the procedure in general, indirect gonioscopy. First of all, explain the procedure to the patient what you are going to perform, because patient cooperation is equally important while performing gonioscopy. It is done under topical anesthesia. Both the patient and the clinician should sit comfortably on the slit lamp, and since it takes a bit longer time, as in case of beginners, you can use arm rest to stabilize your arm and thereby the lens. If you are using a Zeiss or Sussman gonio lens, we don't need a coupling fluid, so it can be directly placed on the anterior surface of the cornea. Care must be taken not to put an extra pressures or undue pressure, and you should not be seen any corneal fold, which indicates that you are excessively pressing on the lens. If you are using a Goldman lens, the concavity of the lens should be partly filled. I am saying it should be filled partly. Don't fill it fully, because when you are trying to put the lens on the cornea, few drops of the viscoelastic trickles down on patient's cheek, and then patient becomes uncomfortable for this procedure. So fill it partly, and take care that air bubbles should not come in between, otherwise it may hamper your view. Ask the patient to look up, then place the gonial lens over the sclera as shown in this picture. On the inferior sclera, you can put the lens, then retract the upper lid, and you can ask the patient to look straight. Thereby, you can put the lens on the cornea. And by rotating, you can see the angle structures. Preferably, the procedure should be done in dark room. The illumination lamp and the microscope are placed perpendicular to the pupil, and they keep the slit lamp beam slightly off center of 30 to 35 degree, because if you throw light directly on the pupil, it will constrict the pupil and falsely open the angle. The width should be it should be small inside the slit, and 2 mm width is sufficient to see the angle structures. For examining the superior and inferior angle, the slit should be kept in vertical position, and for nasal and temporal angles, the slit is to be kept in horizontal position. This disinfection of this gonio lens is very important to prevent transfer of infection. So according to the guidelines given by American Academy of Ophthalmology, first you invert the contact lens, wipe the lens with alcohol sponge or the alcohol swabs, fill the concavity with the help with the 1:10 diluted household bleach solution, leave it for 5 minutes and rinse this lens with water. Some manufacturers advise to soak the lens in a 2% glutaraldehyde solution for disinfection. That is equally can be equally done. So let us start with the gonioscopic anatomy of the structures. For structures, we are going to discuss in the angle starting from anterior to the posterior is the Schwalbe's line, then trabecular meshwork, both the non-pigmented and pigmented part. Then comes the scleral spur, and lastly the ciliary body and root of the iris. So we'll discuss one by one. So the anterior-most structure is the Schwalbe's line. It is the peripheral termination of the cornea where the Descemet's membrane ends. Since it is a line, it appears as a fine ridge or an opaque line. It is a transition between transparent cornea and a white translucent tissue of the trabecular meshwork. So location of this Schwalbe's line can be done by corneal wedge technique. In this gonioscopic photograph, you can clearly see the Schwalbe's line, and anteriorly and posterior to that is a non-pigmented and pigmented part of trabecular meshwork. So what is this corneal wedge? When you put a thin slit of light on the antechamber angle, two reflections are formed. You can see one reflection comes from the anterior surface of the cornea, and the second reflection which comes from the posterior surface of the cornea. At a point, it forms a wedge, and the apex of the wedge denotes the Schwalbe's line. So this is the important technique to localize Schwalbe's line in cases of difficult angles. Like if the angle is lightly pigmented, you are not able to see trabecular meshwork pigmentation, and so if you use the corneal wedge technique, you can easily localize Schwalbe's line, and posterior to that will be the trabecular meshwork. In this photograph, you can clearly see the anterior reflection from the anterior surface of the cornea, the posterior reflection. They are meeting at a point and forming a wedge, and the apex of the wedge is the Schwalbe's line. So prominence of the Schwalbe's line is known as posterior embryotoxon and is seen in Axenfeld-Riegel's anomaly. So pigment deposition along or in front of this line is classically seen in pigmentary glaucoma and pseudoexfoliation glaucoma, and that line is called as Sampolesi's line. As you see in this clinical picture, the white arrow indicates the Sampolesi's line. Next structure is trabecular meshwork. As it is a meshwork, it gives a granular or porous pigmented appearance on gonioscopy. So the anterior part of the trabecular meshwork is seen just adjacent to the Schwalbe's line, and it is whitish in color. It is non-pigmented. The posterior, the functional part of the trabecular meshwork, is seen anterior to the scleral spur, and it is pigmented part. So for beginners, if you are doing gonioscopy, first locate the angle at if you're using a 3-mirror lens or a Zeiss lens, first examine at 12 o'clock. Thereby you are seeing an inferior angle. Since the inferior part of the angle is the deepest and the most pigmented, you can easily appreciate the structures in the inferior quadrant. And once you are appreciated the structures, you can rotate the lens to view the other quadrants of the angle. Sometimes you may see blood in the Schlemm's canal, which lies just posterior to the posterior trabecular meshwork. It can be seen in normal eyes if you are performing gonioscopy in a lying or supine position. If you are giving an undue pressure with the Goldman 3-mirror or any Goldman lens, it can hamper the drainage, and that's why you can see the blood in the Schlemm's canal. That is called as provocative gonioscopy. It is used to localize the Schlemm's canal in surgeries where we put a shunt in Schlemm's canal. So to identify and to locate the Schlemm's canal, this technique of provocative gonioscopy is done. In cases of raised episcleral venous pressure like Sturge-Weber syndrome or carotico-cavernous fistula, you can see blood in the Schlemm's canal. Or in cases of ocular hypotony, there could be reflux of blood in this canal, and you may see blood in the Schlemm's canal on gonioscopy. In this clinical photograph, you can see the upper photograph, you can see the blood in the Schlemm's canal. Same in the next photograph also. The third structure is a scleral spur, and it is the most definite landmark of the angle. It is the extension of sclera and appears as a white prominent line. You can see in this clinical picture that the scleral spur is very clearly or prominently seen near the trabecular meshwork. It lies in between the ciliary body posteriorly and trabecular meshwork anteriorly. Sometimes you may not see the scleral spur as it could be obscured by iris processes, iris bombae, or peripheral anterior synecdoche. The posterior structure is ciliary body band. It is a tan gray color pigmented band seen, and it can be seen in physiological conditions like myopia or aphakia, pathological conditions like angle recession, post-ocular trauma, or in cases of cyclodialysis, part of the ciliary body band can be seen. As shown in this clinical photograph, you can see the part of the ciliary body band is visible because of angle recession. Narrow or absent ciliary body band is seen in hypermetropia or in cases of anterior iris insertion. The next structure to be seen is iris, particularly should be seen for its peripheral configuration and its insertion. So depending on this, it has 3 types, that the steep, regular, or quay type of iris configuration. In a steep configuration, the iris has convexity anteriorly. It is seen normally, or the convexity may be exaggerated in cases of hypermetropia. A regular or flat iris configuration is seen in myopia or aphakic cases. Quay or concavity anteriorly is seen in cases of high myop or pigment dispersion syndrome. Insertion of the iris is important as because normally it is inserted on the ciliary body band, but in case of plateau iris, the iris insertion is just at the scleral spur, and therefore you can see a last prominent iris roll as shown in this clinical photograph. The first arrow, which is near the pupillary margin, and this indicates the first convexity, and the second convexity is seen as the iris drapes over the ciliary body. So it produces a characteristic sine wave appearance or a double hump appearance. You can see this on indentation gonioscopy. If you perform a routine standard gonioscopy, you may confuse this with a narrow angle. So you need to perform indentation gonioscopy to find out whether it is a plateau iris or a actually a narrow angle. You can see blood vessels in the angle. So normally the blood vessels are seen which have radial orientation, they are thick, they are non-branching, and they do not cross the scleral spur. However, the new vessels seen in neovascularization of iris or in neovascular glaucoma, you can see these fine arborizing vessels which crosses the scleral spur. As shown in this clinical photograph, you can see the arborizing small fine network of the new vessels seen in the angle. So other type of gonioscopy is dynamic or indentation gonioscopy. It is performed when after doing a standard gonioscopy, if you are not able to see trabecular meshwork, it indicates that the angle is narrow or closed. So, or if the iris has a steep configuration. So you need to find out whether it is actually a closed angle or it is because of peripheral anterior synechia. So it mainly differentiates between synechial closure or an appositional closure. It is particularly done with the help of 4-mirror lenses. You put the lens on the cornea and apply gentle pressure. As the cornea is indented, the aqueous tries to flow out through the angle, and with, if it is a case of appositional angle closure, the angle will open on indentation. As shown in this figure, you can see initially the angle is closed in figure 1. In second figure, after indentation, the angle is open. So it indicates that it is just because the structures are in close approximation, there is a appositional angle closure. While in case of peripheral anterior synechia, even if you indent the cornea, the synechia are not going to rupture. So they are going to remain as it is, and so you are not so the angle structures are not seen with indentation. So in this diagram, you can see the angle, the red arrow indicates that the peripheral anterior synechia are there and they are not broken with the indentation on the cornea also. In the second clinical photograph, you can see the peripheral anterior synechia. It's shown by red arrow. While performing dynamic gonioscopy, if the intraocular pressure is more than 40, it is not effective because since the IOP is more, the expansion of the scleral limbal ring is restricted, and so you cannot perform the indentation gonioscopy. So one must differentiate between the normal iris processes and the peripheral anterior synechia. The iris processes are fine. They extend into the scleral spur. They follow the concavity of the recess. You can clearly see the underlying scleral spur or the underlying structure of the iris process. And with indentation, this iris process can be seen moving, and they can be broken in cases of angle recession. While the synechia, the peripheral anterior synechia, they are broad-based, as shown in the second photograph. The red arrow indicates the peripheral anterior synechia, and they extend beyond the scleral spur. So whatever abnormality that extends beyond the, whatever structure which extends beyond the scleral spur, it's abnormal in the angle. It bridges the concavity of the recess. It obscures the view of the underlying structures. It resists the movement of iris on indentation, and in angle recession, it remains intact. You can see pigmentation in the angle, and there are various causes for the angle pigmentation. They are more prominently seen in inferior quadrant, and that is physiological. But if you see excessive pigmentation in superior quadrant, it is always pathological. So the condition which causes angle pigmentation are pigment dispersion syndrome, pseudophakic pigment dispersion, pseudoexfoliation of blunt ocular trauma, anti-uveitis following YAG laser iridotomy, post-cataract surgery, nevus of Ota, and iris melanoma. In this clinical photograph, you can see the excessive angle pigmentation. It actually can be seen as a dark blackish in color. There are various systems for grading of this gonios, grading of the angle using the gonioscopy. So there are Schaeffer system, Spitz system, Shays system, and RP center system of grading. Most commonly used is the Schaeffer system, which which assess the geometry of the angle width in 4 grades, and it actually also gives an idea of potential for occlusion of the angle. So grade 4 indicates that the angle width is 35 to 45 degrees. The angle is wide open. There is no chance of angle closure, and all structures are visible. As you can see in the diagram down here, in grade 4, you can see all structures visible. In grade 3, you can see Schwalbe line, trabecular meshwork, and scleral spur. In grade 2, you can see up to trabecular meshwork only. In grade 1, the Schwalbe's line only seen, and in 0 is that the angle is closed and no structure is visible. Speed system of classification uses with 4 features. It uses level of iris insertion, width of the angular recess, configuration of the peripheral iris, and the amount of trabecular meshwork. It is graded in the particular way, and it basically gives a 3-dimensional view of the angle. The Shays system is exactly opposite to the Schaeffer system. It uses the posterior-most structure seen as a grade 0, and in grade 1, the ciliary body band is seen, and which is narrow. Grade 2, the ciliary body band is not seen, only scleral spur is seen. In grade 3, only the posterior trabecular meshwork is not seen, and the angle is likely to be closed. And in grade 4, on the Schwalbe's line is not seen, and this is called as gonioscopically closed angle. The next system is RP center of grading. In this, grade 0 is no dipping of the beam. Grade 1 is grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. If you see the structure up to the middle 1/3 of the trabecular meshwork and anterior to that, it indicates the angle is closed. So the structure seen as a posterior 1/3 of the trabecular meshwork, it indicates that angle is open, and the further structure also indicates that the angle is wide open. So if you're performing a gonioscopy, how will you represent it diagrammatically? It is very important, and this is a standard methodology is followed. You need to put a symbol of cross representing each quadrant. The posterior most visible structure you need to document, and the abbreviations are like ciliary body CB, scleral spur SS, trabecular meshwork TM, and Schwalbe's line SL. The second part, that the grading of the pigmentation should also be noted, and the configuration of the iris should also be mentioned here. If any abnormality like neovascularization pass, if you see, that also should be documented. So in this diagram, you can see the gonioscopic diagram of right eye showing scleral spur seen in superior quadrant up to scleral spur, and rest all 3 quadrants, the structures are visible up to the ciliary body, and 1 plus pigmentation in all 3 quadrants, except in the inferior quadrant, you see 2 plus pigmentation, and the configuration of iris is flat in 360 degree. So like this way, you need to document your gonioscopic findings. So after performing gonioscopy, you need to diagnose whether it is an angle closure or angle open, basically. So if you are able to see the scleral spur, if it is visible 360 degree, the angle is wide open. If only 180 degree of the scleral spur is visible or less than 180 degree, you perform an indentation gonioscopy. So if it is a synovial closure, you will find out that there are peripheral antisynechiae and the angle will not open. If it is, if you can open the angle, it could be either a positional angle closure or primary angle closure suspect. So go for IOP checkup. If the intraocular pressure is on higher side, it is primary angle closure. And if it is normal, it is primary angle closure suspect. Like this way, you can come to the diagnosis of whether it is an open angle or angle closure glaucoma. There are few gonioscopic images you can see. Like this is a clinical photograph of wide open angle. You can see all structures, so Schwalbe's line, trabecular meshwork, scleral spur, and a wide ciliary body band. This is another photograph of a wide open angle, and here you can see normal iris processes reaching up to the scleral spur. The red arrow indicates the fine iris processes which are normally seen. This is a clinical photograph, gonioscopic photograph. As you are not able to see any structure, the angle is closed. This photograph shows angle recession. You can see a broad ciliary body band beneath the trabecular meshwork. It is grayish in color. You can see excessive or heavy trabecular meshwork pigmentation in pigment dispersion glaucoma. You can see it is almost black in color. The white arrow indicates the heavy pigmentation in the trabecular meshwork. You can see fine arborizing vessels at the angle in cases of neovascularization. You can also see neovascularization of iris in this case. This is a metallic foreign body lodged in the angle seen on the gonioscopy. It is a microhyphema, blood in the angle post ocular trauma. This is a photograph of iridodialysis. You can see the root of the iris is torn from the ciliary body, and you can see a wide ciliary body band here. In cases of anterior chamber IOL, you can see the haptic of IOL in the angle. The red arrow indicates the part of the haptic seen in angle. It's a case of iris melanoma where the part of the tumor is seen in the angle. The other structures are also visible, and it is an open angle with iris melanoma. This is a case of emulsified silicone oil in the angle, status post RD surgery. You can see small oil bubbles in the angle. So what are the limitations of gonioscopy? It is a relative contraindicated in cases of acute inflamed eye. Since you are using a coupling agent, you cannot perform a various procedure like applanation tonometry, visual field, or OCT after gonioscopy, so it has to be done before gonio. If you're using a bright light, it can falsely constrict the pupil and falsely open up the angle. It is difficult to use 3-mirror lenses, especially in patients having small palpebral apertures. Air bubbles under the gonio lens may hamper your visualization and should be taken care of. Excessive pressure on the cornea, if you're using a Goldman lens, can cause angle closure, means that falsely closure of the angle. And if you're using a Zeiss type of lens, you can falsely open up the angle. In cases of convex iris configuration, it is difficult to see angle structure, so you have to see it by visualizing it by over the heel technique by asking the patient to look in the direction of the mirror, and thereby you can see the angle structures. Prolonged application of this gonio lens can cause corneal edema and should be avoided. There are new modalities available for objective assessment of the angle. They include Scheimpflug photography, UBM, and anti-segment OCT. However, this gives the objective idea of the angle, but the amount of trabecular meshwork pigmentation is it a oppositional angle closure, or it is a synechial angle closure that cannot be diagnosed on these modalities. So even if these modalities are available, they are yet to replace gonioscopy, and therefore gonioscopy remains a gold standard reference technique to assess the angle width and angle structures. These are all my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Priyanka, ma'am. That was really a very informative lecture and full of it was like a gonioscopy atlas. So thank you for your lecture. I hope many of the doubts regarding the gonioscopy must have been solved. So I request audience, if there are any questions, you can please put in the chat box here. Meanwhile, I would like to ask you, Priyanka, ma'am.
Yeah.
And that in cases like you showed in your last slide, that there are newer modalities coming for the uh,
Yeah.
angle assessment. So
Yeah.
what do you prefer? Like in like you said, there are certain limitations of the gonioscopy.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
in certain cases, like suppose new PG or somebody is doing a gonioscopy, he
yeah,
or she may not be very sure of your angle thing. So
yeah. Angle structures, whether they are performing correctly or not. In that case,
yeah, it's
so
correlatable
so
with your OCT findings or something like that. Yeah.
So if the best way is, even if we have various modalities in a study conducted on Asian eyes, it showed that UBM, if you measure objective assessment using UBM and gonioscopy, they matches a lot. So if you want to cross check your finding of angle gonioscopy, I would recommend to go for UBM. Other modality is anti-segment OCT, but for anti-segment OCT, you need to localize the scleral spur on the anti-segment OCT, and which is a bit difficult and needs expertise to locate the scleral spur on anti-segment OCT. So UBM could be the other option if you want to compare or if you want to cross-check your findings.
Okay. Now, there is one more question coming from Dr. Aishwarya Joshi. Like, how to visualize your central fundus through the gonioscopy,
Yeah,
and you see the effect of gonio massage in arterial occlusion management, like in as a early management of the CRAO.
yeah, you can, with the help of this Gonio 3 mirror Goldman lens, the central mirror is used to see the central fundus of the eye. And to see the effect of gonio massage on arterial occlusion, if that you need to uh, see whether the thromboembolus has dislodged or not from the that rather than using gonioscopy, you can use an indirect ophthalmoscopy to see whether it is dislodged or not in the case of CRO.
Yeah. And Dr. Aishwarya, you same thing you can see it on the slit lamp in the gonio. You just have to align your objective lens and your illumination in the parallel to each other, and you will be able to see the central fundus like we do it in the retro illumination, and you will be able to see the what effect that you are getting with your gonio massage. Now, Dr. Taswala sir has a question. I thank you, Dr. Taswala sir, for showing his keen interest in all our PG lectures and having a constant support. Thank you, Jignesh sir. His question is, what is your choice of gonioscopy lens and why?
Uh, so if you ask my choice, I would prefer a Zeiss 4 mirror lens. But for beginners, it is best to use the Goldman one single mirror or 2 mirror lens, because since we are using a coupling agent and it forms a seal on the cornea, it is nicely stabilized on the globe, and so that even if the patient slightly moves the eye, your lens doesn't move. So you can properly appreciate all the structures and can see the uh, angle mm, pathologies also clearly. So for beginners, it would be a Goldman lens, and for I prefer Zeiss 4 mirror lens to use.
Perfect. Thank you. So nice of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Then, ma'am, there is one more question. What type of gonioscopy do you usually perform? And again, the same question. What is the preferred gonio lenses? I think this has been answered.
Gonioscopy using a slit lamp here, and that we perform a 4 mirror with the help of 4 mirrors eyes gonio prism. We do gonioscopy. Yeah.
So I think that answers all the questions that have been asked in the session. If there are, this lecture will be uploaded on our YouTube channels, BOA iTalks plugged in. So if you have more questions, you can actually put in the comment section, and we will see to it that we answer it as promptly as possible. There is one more question. Can lignocaine jelly be used as a coupling agent?
No, we don't recommend using lignocaine jelly, because why to put anesthetic on this jelly on the eye if we have other better options like viscoelastic, which are not going to cause any harm on the cornea. Since we are doing the process on the cornea, we need to be a bit careful. So viscoelastic substance or any tear substitute will be better than lignocaine jelly.
Okay, fine. So I think that answers all the questions, and Which visco can be used?
Any viscoelastic substance which used for surgeries or which is available with you can be used. I said a tear substitute which will also do. So it is just to form a seal there, since the lens is bit concave. Especially in cases of Goldman lenses, it's not required for 4 mirror lenses.
So, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Dr. Preetham sir, Swapnesh sir, and Ragini ma'am for giving us freedom for conducting this PG lectures throughout the session. And thank you, Priyanka ma'am, for your
Thank you.
lecture. And thank you all for attending. We'll
Thank
meet
you, everyone.
on next Tuesday, 8 o'clock, with our continuation of PG education. Thank you all.